Hey there everyone, my name is Nicholas Ugero, and this is just a video of me responding and giving my impressions of the movie and documentary Earthlings. Now I'm just going to give a little bit of detail on me and my values and my morals and how I've kind of changed as a person before really just delving into what the movie discusses and its overall impact on me and my opinions, even more so than before. Um, it's been about a little over 2 years now of me doing changes in my diet and my lifestyle to limit the amount of suffering that I am paying for. So I heard about the dairy industry being a lot worse than the meat industry. So having a reduction in my milk and dairy intake was a lot easier than the meat. So that's something I first started doing. I started doing like almond milk and things like that, not buying cheeses, and slowly but surely I started, like, this was like a year and a half process. Like I started cutting out lunch meat a little bit and finally phased that out, and then I finally started phasing out the dinner meats, and it got to the point where I became veganish. So I try my best to avoid the stuff as I can, but here and there I would not like give myself crap for it. I wouldn't shame myself for having a little bit here and there. I knew that I was doing a lot better than I was previously, and as long as I'm trying, that's the most I can really ask of myself. It's still a process, and it's trying to unlearn bad habits and bad tendencies. So I even to this day, I wasn't really 100% off of it, but 95% of my diet did not consist of it at all, if even more, did not consist of any sort of animal products in my diet. And one of the books I read was the book of Vegan-ish, and it's like half of a book, and then it's also the other half is like a cookbook, so you can have a bunch of different dishes that you can try out. And then just to preface my impressions on the movie, the documentary, I like a week and a half ago I watched around 24 minutes of it, and by that point I was already bawling my eyes out, and was like, my eyes were puffy. I was just extremely distraught, and it was very, very tough to watch. I was going to plan on finishing it the next day. I didn't. I luckily was able to have my best friend watch it with me just today, and we just finished it front to back. And I didn't look away at all, and that was one of the toughest things. The movie covers 5 basic categories that we as humans take advantage of animals, and one of them was pets, the other was food, the next one was clothing, and then entertainment and science. And for pets, one of the ways that we can abuse the animals is by buying them from pet stores, and pet stores usually get supplied their pets from puppy mills, and almost anyone can really do it. This documentary is from 2005, so I'm not sure how much it's changed since then, but from what I was seeing, it was really, really terrible. And there's a lot of people that don't spay or neuter their dogs because they feel like that's demasculating them or taking away from them. But then they have babies and they don't know what to do with them, so they give them away or they sell them, and who knows what happens to them at that point. So that's where the puppy mills come in, and the conditions there were atrocious. And then they were talking about strays. And with euthanasia, my mom actually just got a puppy or a pit bull mix from a shelter, and it was about to be put down. So this is something that's still going on today, probably even more so. And usually they do the injections, which is the most humane way, but for cost effectiveness, they have to resort to gas chambers. And from what we know about the Jews and things like that, those aren't humane at all. It's very slow and painful. It takes around 20 minutes for these animals to die, and just seeing that play out in video was very, very hard to watch. The food was one of the toughest things in the whole documentary. They showed with like the cows and stuff like that, and the males, they would dehorn them, and of course they didn't give them any sort of thing to stop them from feeling pain. So they just used a big steel bolt cutter or steel cutter and just dehorn them while someone holding them by the nose to kind of keep them straight and not moving too much. They also use steel bolts before slitting their throats while they're suspended. And so they shoot a steel bolt into their head, and that's supposed to render them unconscious, but sometimes that's not the case, which was what I witnessed in the video, was a case where they weren't unconscious, and they were most assuredly feeling what was happening to them. And they got their throats cut, and even by the time they were being led along a track, hanging by their feet, they were still very much conscious. And that was a very tough thing to watch. One of the hardest things was the kosher factory that it showed a snippet of, and the process that they do. They turn the cow upside down on this in this contraption, and they cut its throat upside down, which allows the blood to go into its air tract, its esophagus and things like that. And so they're inhaling their own blood and basically drowning. And they do a lot of other processes. I'm not going to get too much into it, but that was the part I stopped at when I first watched some of the documentary. So we got past that part. They talked a little bit about pigs and they talked about veal very, very minimally. They talked about the pigs and how with the small ones, how they cut their ears off without any sort of pain numbing at all. So they feel everything. They cut their tail off. They shave their teeth off or snip them off, like shave them. And then they castrate them, which is their genitals. And they do that without any sort of pain numbing. And so that was very tough to watch, and just seeing these human beings perform these acts on animals, and some of them were taunting them, and this is in regards to the cows or anything like that. It was very infuriating. There was many times in this documentary where I was screaming at the TV and very much crying, and I'm not sure if you can see how puffy my eyes are, but it was very tough. They got a little bit into fishing and some diseases that have been spread because of all the waste products from like pigs and stuff like that getting into the water systems, and a lot of contamination. A lot of these practices are not sustainable. All of them are not sustainable, actually. And the amount of suffering that's inflicted on these animals is atrocious. They even showed dolphins, which I didn't even really think of, but that was also very horrific and very infuriating. And just seeing just the pain that they're going through, for anyone that has any sort of moral foundation or any sort of conscience, it's very tough to watch that segment in particular. Then they showed a little bit about chickens. This is not entirely in order with the food segment that I'm going through, but they did show chickens and them debeaking them and their terrible conditions and the environment that they're in as well. And then whaling, they got a little bit into that, and just understanding how smart these creatures are, especially the dolphins and things like that, and just ending their life prematurely. Even if you call it like killing them humanely, I don't see any justification for killing an animal years before it's supposed to die, and then the certain conditions that they're in anyway, even before that. The fear, the lack of space, the lack of nutrients, the lack of love and compassion and proper sleeping, and any of those things, any of the things that we as human beings want, that's what they want too. They understand connections and love, and they have the capability of having feelings. They don't just run on instinct. They also have feelings, mental feelings. I'm sure you guys can understand that with dogs. And luckily they didn't really show that many, like the dog slaughterhouses that are like in China and things like that, because that would be a whole nother thing for me, just because of societally we don't do that here. But it doesn't make it any different. Same thing with pigs and dogs. It's the same thing in my book. And then it was going into clothing a little bit. It was showing that most of our leather for our shoes and our boots and our jackets and our wallets, they come from India. And they showed the long and grueling process these cows have to go through in order to get to the place where they're going to get killed, very, very roughly. and they can't do it in India, so they have to send them on a few day trek where some of them don't even make it there, and then the ones that do make it there, they're extremely underfed, under they don't get that much water at all. They have to break their tail and snap it in a couple of different places just to get the thing to go up. They put chili powder in its eyes to make it get up because it's so just depleted of energy and all that stuff. And it showed the process of them killing it. And then the chemicals, because this is flesh that we're using. So like I don't have my wallet on me, which is a leather one. I'm not gonna have this one anymore. But just that, like, it's flesh, so it's supposed to decompose, but they put all these horrible chemicals on it in order for it to stay intact and have it not decompose. So it's completely unnatural anyway. And then for the entertainment side of it, the circuses and the abuse that they go to, they don't do tricks because of positive reinforcement. They do it because of fear of repercussions for not doing the tricks. And so I had a lot of different video of people doing the training in these big barns, and one of these psychos talking to like a new recruit about how to go about attacking the elephants to make sure they comply and do what they say, and make sure you hear them screaming so you know that they're in pain, so they know that they understand what they need to do and things like that. It was horrible. And I already knew about the rodeos from watching this other YouTube channel. It's called S.H.A.R.K, S.H.A.R.K. It means showing animals respect and kindness. And they talk about, I forgot what the state is, but these rodeo things still go on. And they also have these pigeon shootings where they have pigeons in cages and they shoot and they release them and then they shoot them, and then they literally have kids round up the half dead birds and snap their necks on barrel rims and just snap them and throw them in there. And I watched that a couple of years ago, and so they're still doing stuff like that. That's horrific. But they showed the rodeo abuse and how the bulls are bucking when they do the bull riding. They actually taunt them and put them in bad situations and put them in pain so that they start doing that. And so that's horrible. There's no excuse for that. And then the horse and the dog racing, and then the betting and the gambling in regards to that, and then the hunting for animals just for sport. That's another thing entirely. And then like the final one was about science and how they do experiments, and they showed a few experiments. One of them was where they had some sort of monkey. I can't remember the name of the monkey, but they had like a neck thing cemented to its neck, and they would have it laying on a bed, and then they would at like 1,000 G's, so that's a lot of force. They would have it turn in like a 60-degree angle, so you just see this thing's neck just snap, and it's just to reenact like a car collision. And the fact that we do these experiments in animals, especially with injecting and other things along those lines, they're different than us. So putting these animals in this situation is not going to be the same as with us anyway. So that's basically what it gets down to. It gets down to the science and entertainment, clothing, food, and pets. And it's one hell of a ride. I can tell you that much. You have to be very strong-willed in order to get through this thing without closing your eyes. It was very, very tough for me and my friend. It was shocking. I already knew some of these conditions, which is why I'm so glad I've been doing this process for so long. And I highly recommend that every single person on this planet watches this movie. When it comes to kids, definitely talk to parents. I'm going to link a video that I just saw posing the question, should children watch this movie? And I would say so, but definitely with parents' consent. This is a very, very rough movie, but in terms of me with my gardening and wanting to connect kids with their food more, this is a great gateway into connecting yourselves with what is happening to these animals before it gets on our plate, and the conditions that they're in, and the psychopaths that are working there day and night and gladly doing this to these animals. It's very, It's very psychopathic, and this whole society, in my opinion, is psychopathic. You have to be a psychopath to really get ahead in this society, which is why I probably will not succeed too well, besides making a few smart decisions with investing in silver and things like that. But living true to your morals and your values, that is one of the most fulfilling things you can possibly do in your life. It is one of the most important things. By far, it is the most important thing. Finding truth, living to your values, which is what this documentary is about. It's truth. It's truth right in your face, and you cannot disregard it. And I can't even get my brothers to watch this documentary. Oh, I already know what happens in the industry, so I don't need to watch it. I've already seen a couple clips of something somewhere at some point, so I don't need to watch this documentary. It's extremely ignorant to kind of think that way, and I'm not saying that in a demeaning way, but if you have any sort of open mind at all, I would highly recommend watching this film. My impressions were that of being distraught and infuriated and just sad at the whole state of affairs when it comes to nature and us taking advantage, thinking that we are above these beings when we're all on this planet together. And they are sentient beings. They are not stupid. They can feel pain. They can feel fear and love. It makes them no different than us. The only thing that makes us different is the hippocampus, the higher brain function, which allows us to really think and be creative and things like that. We still have that mammal brain, which is the feelings, and we still have the brainstem, which is the reptile brain. And so, just because we have that one extra set in our brain doesn't make us any better than them. Because there's things that I've seen in that documentary that just make me shake my head and think, what are these beings, what have they done to deserve this? And what makes us think that we can succeed as a society if we continue to do this to innocent beings and end their life short? It makes no sense to me. And I'm glad I've made so much progress in my life in terms of meat and dairy and cutting back so much and feeling fulfilled from doing that and my health feeling better. Because you gotta remember, this meat doesn't matter if what your blood type is, because there's blood type diets out there, which I used to be a proponent of, and no more for me. I don't think that makes any sense to think that meat is gonna be good for you depending on your blood type. The way that these conditions are and the way that it's just like when I was talking about the corporate agriculture business. All they care about is profit and yield. So they pump these animals as fast as possible, kill them as they're as big as possible. All they see is dollar signs. It's all they see is dollar signs. They leave their empathy and their morals and their humanity at the door, and they do this business for profit. And it makes me sick to my stomach. And that's we can't change the society. We can't expect things to get better for us if we're continuing to let this happen and just stay ignorant to it. We have to open up our eyes. If these meat industries were with glass walls where we can see through them, then I think we would make a lot more different choices for sure. Every single one of us would probably stop eating meat if we had to kill our own animals for meat. And I think that would be very, very true. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I highly recommend watching this documentary. It's from 2005, so it is pretty old. I doubt anything's really gotten better in terms of conditions for these animals. And I'm sure it's just increased the amount that we kill every single year. And we just got to be more conscious. Just take steps at a time. As long as you're trying, that's all anyone can ever ask of you. As long as you're trying. As long as you're aware that there's an issue and that you're just trying. Because your health will benefit from it. These animals will benefit from it. We'll stop supporting these people. And we can grow as a society. So I thank you guys for watching until the end, if you did. And have a great night. Take care.